Firstly, I have to tell you that this meeting is being recorded for publication on the Thatcham Town Council YouTube channel. So welcome to new councillors. In fact, apart from me, you're all new councillors. For this first meeting of Planning and Highways Committee for the new council on the 23rd of May. And because it's new, I will give you sort of an introduction to things as we go along, how we have traditionally dealt with things. So of course that is open to change. So yeah, I'll do that. I'll do it agenda item by agenda item. So Madam Clerk, Deputy Clerk, apologies for absence.
Apologies received from Councillor Jeff Brooks.
Thank you. Any declarations of interest to matters on the agenda that you wish to declare at this point? See nobody, thank you. So we move on to the minutes to confirm, take as read and confirm as accurate, and as I'm the only person, councillor who was present at that time, I will propose that we confirm these minutes. Is there a seconder for that? Thank you. And all those in favour? Thank you very much. So there can't be anybody against. That is, those are confirmed. So any matters arising from the previous minutes, Madam Deputy Clerk?
Just to advise, Chairman, you may recall we discussed planning applications for schools.
Yes.
And the fact that they were coming before us and not BREEAM compliant,
yeah,
so forth. So we were instructed to write on behalf of Thatcham Town Council to Laura Farris, just to advise that that letter has gone to Laura Farris, and we've received a response to say that Laura has initially ensured that councillors' deep concerns about these matters have been raised further with the Department for Education in order to seek government-considered position in relation to these concerns, and they will keep us updated.
So I will explain the background. So we had a planning application at the last meeting from Francis Bailey School. Well, we had a planning application some time ago from Francis Bailey School for to demolish an existing old block and replace it with a new one. And we rejected it at that point because we sent it back because there was no information about its environmental performance. And we were a little suspicious. And so at the last meeting, we got an update saying that unfortunately they would like to meet the current guidelines, but unfortunately the grant that they've received is insufficient for them to achieve that. So we decided, in line with our declaration of a climate emergency, that we were obliged to oppose the application. But we felt very bad about that. So we wrote a letter to Laura Farris pointing out that we were put in an invidious position because to objecting to something that we wanted, because there was insufficient money coming from government. So the Deputy Clerk wrote to Laura Farris, and that was the reply that we received. And hopefully next time we get one, they will be able to achieve that. And of course that will then go to West Berkshire Council, who has that been determined yet? Well, no, you'd know if it was, because it would be on later on the agenda. So that is still to be considered by West Berkshire Council. Of course, if it goes to a planning meeting, there haven't been any yet in the new council. There aren't any committees yet in the council. So that's that item. Just one other item for me. I was amused when I read the minutes in detail. That there was we received notification of a closure of a public footpath for building works, and they said that blue light access would be maintained. So I get the feeling that somebody in the planning department is doing cut and paste without thinking about what they're writing. And we had the opposite problem last week, a week or two back, over the closure of the roads through Crookham Common, where it didn't say that access would be maintained. And so perhaps it'd be nice if we got a bit of consistency where they think about what is being done before they send us the notification. Anyway, so we then move on to agenda. Only nothing further, I assume, because you weren't at the meeting. Appeal decision on agenda item 5, the appeal decisions on Lawrence's Lane, which has been known for a few weeks. It is a decision. So there's nothing much that we can comment on, except to say that we were represented, or I represented the council there. And if you read the decision, that you see that we are mentioned in a few places as having informed that decision, which is good to know. There's a separate decision about costs, which is nothing to do with us, because that is purely a matter between the appellant and West Berkshire Council. We didn't have any costs to be discussed. Any questions about that? If not, sorry. Yeah. So any questions first? So if there's no questions about that, we will note that decision, that the appeal was dismissed. I guess one subsequent point to that is that there is an injunction on the site, which means that the residents will, by law, will have to leave. I'm a bit more sceptical about whether the site will be restored to its previous condition, but we will need to wait and see. Then we move on to agenda item 6, the Great Western Railway Customer and Community Improvement Fund application. Shall I cover this one as it's last year again? So a year ago, we received rather late in the day notification of a grant scheme from Great Western Railway for projects that are connected in some way with the railway. And last year we received it quite late. We have a sort of list of things that we would like to do, and the only one that we could put together within the timescale was this waymarking project between the station and the town centre. We were unsuccessful. This year we got earlier notification, but it came just before the election, so we had other things on our mind, and again we have a very late application. So I would suggest that we reapply the same basic project. We need to modify some of the explanation because the circumstances have changed as to why we didn't consult with West Berkshire Council. We did a year ago discuss with them in principle about using street lamps and signs for fixing the waymarking onto. They agreed in principle, but we weren't at that point able to, didn't have enough time to get the detailed costing. We are asking for the full amount of this, and the work would be done, we expect, by what's the roadworks contractor, Volk Highways. So we would get the money and we will pass it on. So there's limited involvement of the council staff and no financial commitment from applying. So what I'd ask if you would approve that we submit the application basically as you have it in this. It's an online form, as they all are nowadays. So this, I think, if I recall, was a printout that comes back once you've completed the form, giving the same justification with some extra explanation for basically the same project with some extra explanation for the circumstances of this year. And I will deal with that offline with the deputy clerk if you are content with that. I'd like to propose that, and the deadline is Thursday midnight, by the way. And I think last time it might have gone in at Thursday at 10 p.m, but we might get it a bit earlier this time. So I would like to propose that we resubmit this application this year. As I say, thank you, and I see a seconder there. Yeah. And those in favour of resubmitting that application, thank you. That's unanimous as well. So we then move on to the planning applications, with the meat of the meeting. So I'll give a bit of explanation here. So the town council is provides advice and comments to West Berkshire Council, who make the decision. And I would say that we do that largely as representatives of the town. We don't have to make the decision, so we don't have to be concerned about the details of the legal aspects of planning. Obviously, it's not a good idea to say something which we know to be contradictory to that, but it's up to West Berkshire Council to weigh the balance of different factors. So we can say what we think are the important factors, and when it gets to West Berkshire Council, they have to weigh them up and do that formal decision. As far as the process goes, we make the submissions. Almost all applications in West Berkshire Council are decided by officers. And there is a process called calling in, whereby a ward councillor can request that the application is considered by a committee of councillors. That also happens automatically if there are more than a certain number of objectors, and it can also be called in by the the officers themselves if they think it's a contentious one, or I think it happens automatically if it's very large. But almost all applications get are decided by officers. As far as the process in this meeting goes, we have traditionally been quite informal. So the Deputy Clerk will give a presentation of the key documents from the application, together with other photos to give you an idea, and then we will have a discussion. Under the council standing orders, we would then, when we think we've got a common view or close to a common view, then someone, either myself or one of you, can propose what we recommend or our views, what we submit to West Berkshire Council. There are three options: to support it, to make no objections, or to object. And traditionally, we have only supported applications where they have a public benefit. So a commercial application would normally be no objections or object. So a public benefit might be schools, or it might be a solar panels. Those are the sort of things where we might give support. But it's up to this meeting to make that decision. And then once we propose and second it, we then move into more formal aspects, and then we can invite people to speak more formally. Often we don't need, or generally we don't need that, because we've had the discussion, and then we move to a vote. And we have today we have 10 applications, which is a lot more than usual. 2 of them are quite large and 5 of them are quite small. So we'll try to move ahead and get finished within a reasonable time. The other thing, if you're new to this, is that there is a formal procedure for inviting members of the public to speak. And we have, for the first of these, we have one member. Well, we have the representative of the applicant on Zoom, and we have 2 members of the public who may wish to speak in the room. And that generally happens after we've discussed it, and then we might want to discuss again after we heard what they have to say before making the decision. Also, unusually, we would normally, for a typical application, decide if we want to object or make comments. We would discuss those during the meeting. But the two big applications that we have at this meeting have both, there have been previous applications for the same site that have been rejected that have gone to appeal. So we now have a new application, and I think it is at least likely that if that was rejected by West Berkshire Council, it would go to appeal again. And I have therefore written in advance of the meeting some grounds that we can consider, which will help us if we need to proceed further. So something else I should say, if it goes to the committee, then there would be a site visit of the West Berkshire councillors in advance of their meeting, and a representative of the town council can go to point out features. There's not a debate about the merits, but if you want to point out a particular thing that they should bear in mind at the meeting, that can happen at the site visit. And then we have the opportunity to speak at the meeting of the council, the West Berkshire Council itself. Strict time limit, and it's also therefore helpful to have something written in advance. So for those 2 reasons, I've written material in advance for us to consider, but it's up to you if we do accept that or modify it or don't use it at all. So moving on to where we would normally start an application, over to the Deputy Clerk to give an introduction.
Okay, so the first one we have up this evening is the application for Hambridge Lake on Hambridge Road. This is an application for 9 holiday chalets and a clubhouse with access from Hambridge Road, with parking areas, new pedestrian links and ancillary works. Now, as the chairman previously mentioned, this site has been considered before, where there was a previous application for 41 holiday chalets, and this was went to appeal and dismissed in December 2021. Thatcham Town Council opposed the previous application, and the council came back with, West Berkshire Council came back with the fact that there'd been overdevelopment, increased flood risk, limited visibility to and from the adjacent road bridge, and the hazards associated with the crossing ports of the National Cycle Path and Canal football path and site entrance. So that's a summary of where it was before. So This is the site. You're probably familiar with it.
And just to clarify, if you're new to this, this is still in Thatcham parish, even though you think it's in Newbury. The Thatcham parish goes all the way to Hambridge Road here, and then it goes along London Road right up to the roundabout and comes back up Turnpike. So that little bit south of that road is still in Thatcham.
Okay. So as I say, this time round, it's a application for 9 holiday chalets. You have here their design and access statement, giving a brief introduction to the scheme. Let me expand that a bit more. So this is the site that it encompasses. They're looking to have the access road just here opposite Two Rivers Way, with parking arrangements up on this corner. And with the 9 chalets with their rear to the London Road and the clubhouse. The chalet accommodation will comprise of 3 bedroom chalets. Sorry, some other bits I was going to. So this is the current site. It's not overly easy to see on this size screen. I don't know if you can see it on there.
So the chalets are on stilts in the lake itself.
So this is the proposed parking area, 20 resident parking spaces, disabled bays, so a total site of 24. Area of existing planting, then the clubhouse here, with 4 parking spaces, proposed footbridge and fishing stations across this side of the site. Existing plantings here, and there'll be some new tree planting throughout the site.
If you're not aware, along I think it's London Road at that point, there were quite a lot of the undergrowth was taken out, and that was due to Thames Water needing to replace the high pressure sewer that between Newbury and that site that runs along the edge of that land.
So this is the along the A4 going down Tambury. So that's from that's from the hospital, looking down that way.
So the document you're looking at is, in this case, I think it's called the design and access statement. So this is the document written by for the developer to support the application. And from past experience, the photographs tend to be taken from favourable locations. Councillor Lunn.
Because this is the first one.
Yeah.
So the previous application was for 41.
43, as I think it was. 41. Anyway, it was. So the previous application was much larger. Well, it was 3 blocks, which were 4 stories high.
Are they still in the lake?
They weren't. No, they were only partly in the lake, and so this application, without prejudging too much, appears to have moved into the lake in order to circumvent the grounds for the objection or the refusal of the inspector of the loss of trees. But we have the representative of the applicant who will give that explanation later if you want further clarification, but that was what I understood.
So again, some more visuals from the
Yeah.
actual planning application. So that's the landscape master plan. And the elevations. Sorry, I have to zoom in and out because they're kind of different sizes. So in the application itself, there's been 4 objections so far to representations on a number of reasons, which include things like it obstructs the Hanbridge Lane National Cycleway. The site would cause added congestion, disruption on an already busy road, especially during the building process, access issues on the busy road, risks to cyclists, destruction of the environment, adding buildings harmful to the visual setting, one of the last remaining undeveloped gaps between Thatcham and Newbury, light pollution concerns that it's within flood zone 3. Some of the objections that have come through.
Okay. Do you have anything more to present? And I'll go on to mine.
No, if you want
Okay.
to.
So, how about say the previous application was originally made before 2019, before I joined the council, I believe. But I got involved in the appeal. In fact, I went along without much preparation and discovered that, found that it was quite significant, that the gap between Newbury and Thatcham was quite significant and wasn't being described quite accurately in that. So I was able to, the inspector agreed that I could write a document during the weekend in the middle of that hearing, explaining about where the parish boundary between Newbury and Thatcham lies, and that's the map that you can see in the paper that I've got.
Oh, sorry.
It's on the document you've got. But basically, there has been, in Thatcham Town Council, we've referred to this area for some time as the strategic gap. Up till recently, it hasn't been formalised, but as part of the draft local plan, there is a new policy in that draft local plan which formalises that there shouldn't be development between the existing settlement boundaries of Newbury and Thatcham. So if I go through the points that I make, which would be the grounds for us to object should we wish to do so. First one is that the application is of course, I should say we are considering this application on the basis of the documentation that is available now. And the application is lacking some documents, in particular about the nature of the site access, because, as has been mentioned, the National Cycleway 4 goes along the footway that would be crossed. The previous application was based on that it was a rural, it contributed to the rural economy. And it was argued, and the inspector accepted to some extent, that within the technical terms of the planning policies at the time, that it might be considered as such. But if you stand on Hanbridge Lane and say, is this rural, you probably wouldn't, the lay view wouldn't be the same. So that's commented there. So I've been in this document, I'm referring to the policies of the current and future policies of the council. So I won't go through the details there. The class of application is quite important because there are certain rules about how a site owner can change the usage of the site. And therefore it's important to know what classes the application is being made, because that determines whether you need planning permission to change the use. And that is unclear in the application form, point this out, because it says other without saying what type of other it is. And therefore we ask I suggest that we ask West Berkshire Council to consider whether that is sufficient. Another point is that the clubhouse, which we refer to as floating, Not quite sure why, but it's not quite clear to me what a floating structure, how a floating structure is considered in planning terms, whether it's a inherently a float and therefore temporary, and therefore could be changed without planning permission. As I mentioned, the draft local plan had a new policy, which on the gap between Newbury and Thatcham, and I draw attention to that. And I think based on National Planning Policy framework that although the local plan has not yet fully been approved, I think it still would carry significant weight in what's called the planning balance. So I then mentioned National Cycle Route 4, which is significant. And finally, a little bit of an eccentricity here that for some reason, the River Kennet adjacent to the site is shown on the West Berkshire Online map as being common land. And therefore, we need to consider the rights of commoners in respect to this application. So those are the points that I've made here, and if you're minded to support them, I can give further clarification, or if you've got any questions, and if not, we will move on to the views of the people, the members of the public. Do you have anyone have any questions?
Yeah, I have. It's more about the potential change of use.
Yes.
I've been in the construction industry for a few years. We've been onto a couple of ex-gravel pit sites where something very similar has happened. And they've started off with things like this, which was sort of holiday chalets, and then they became permanent. Yeah. And I believe the local authorities had failed to enforce that they couldn't be used for more than something like 30 weeks a year, type of thing.
Yes.
And I was wondering, is that part of your other use question?
Effectively,
that
yes.
Allowing that to happen?
Yes. So that's one of the issues. There is, in fact, a precedent of exactly that happening in Newbury, where a site was given an exception planning permission on the basis that it would be restricted to holiday homes, and it became apparent that people were living there permanently without permission, and once that happens, it's quite difficult to do anything about it. Yeah, so that's one of the reasons why I asked the question, and I think I referred to an Article 4 direction. I didn't mention that, if you know about that. Yeah, so that's one of the reasons why the class of planning application is very important, because that determines what the change of use can be. I think the paper that was circulated this afternoon from the applicant mentioned that the West Berkshire Council is entitled to apply these conditions, but they're not mentioned in the documentation we have so far, which is why I've drawn their attention to it. Bearing in mind, of course, that the planning committee for West Berkshire Council might have a substantial number of new councillors on it as well, and might not be familiar with these points if their attention is not drawn to it. So yes, that's why I've made it, and also, of course, that's also quite important in the respect of a floating structure as to whether that is subject to the change of use conditions at all. And also, I mentioned that because there's something called a clubhouse, as to whether that would be used by people who weren't residents on the site, with the implications on parking, because there is no, in the application, there is no suggestion, there's no proposal about a limitation. So we raised that point for West Berkshire Council to consider whether, again, they might wish to apply a condition which would limit the use. These are the sort of things that one would hope would be dealt with, would be automatically raised by West Berkshire Council, but it does no harm for us to mention them ourselves to make sure that they are not overlooked.
Thank you very much.
Okay, any further questions? Thank you. So perhaps if we turn to so I then have to ask you to, if you would agree to invite members of the public to speak. This is the procedural thing. Are those in favour? Thank you. Nobody against. So we will then invite members of the public to speak, and I will first of all turn to Mr. Nick Harmon, who is on Zoom, who I understand is representing the applicant, or speaking on behalf of the applicant today. So if I say, if you could limit your time to about 5 minutes, no more, and then we might ask questions afterwards. Thank you.
Yes, that's fine. Can you hear me okay?
Fine, thanks, yes.
Wonderful. Okay, right. Well, so my name's Nick Harmon.
One thing, just I need to make a correction, which is that there's a factual error in my document, which is that the chalets have only 3 bedrooms, not 4, which we would correct editorially. Thank you. And then over to you again. Sorry.
Okay. Thank you. Right, so my name's Nick Harmon. I'm Associate Director at Rapport. I'm a landscape architect and I've been involved on this project for quite a while. Jim Bailey, who's the planning agent for this, is stuck on a plane to Glasgow, so he's asked me very last minute to stand in, so please bear with me, but there's a letter that he's issued and he's asked me to read out. So this letter has been submitted in support of the planning application, which has been submitted by Jim Bailey on behalf of the applicant Steve Hamilton. I have reviewed the report and the council's website and I have the following comments to make. A full planning application has been submitted to West Berkshire Council. If West Berkshire Council requests any additional plans and reports, we will supply them. The submitted drawings show a scheme of 9 3-bedroom chalets. The principle of the development was agreed by the appeal inspector in relation to the previous 41 chalet scheme, as the proposal complies with policy AD-PP1. However, he was concerned about overdevelopment, which would have an adverse impact on trees, ecology, and the landscape. In order to address these concerns, the scheme has been significantly reduced in scale so that the effect on trees, ecology, and landscape will be minimal. The application site lies in the countryside because it is outside of a settlement boundary, hence the reference to policy CS10. The inspector agreed that the proposal would make a positive contribution to the rural economy and could be considered to be a rural diversification project in compliance with this policy, as well as policy AD-PP1. The application is for 9 holiday chalets and a clubhouse. The proposal use falls within neither C1 hotel or C3 residential use. It is a sui generis use that does not fall within a use class. The clubhouse will only be used by holidaymakers staying in the chalets. Therefore, there is no need for more parking than the 4 spaces provided for staff. If West Berkshire Council approve the application, it will place conditions on the consent notice that will restrict the use of the chalets and the clubhouse to short-term holidaymakers only, which will ensure that there is no possibility of unrestricted residential use of the chalets or wider public use of the clubhouse. West Berkshire Council will be able to control the use of the proposed development. Any deviation from the agreed uses would require the submission of a new planning application, which would be considered by yourselves and determined by West Berkshire Council. Reference is made to policy DM2 of the draft local plan, which seeks to designate the site and other land as a strategic gap. Members will be aware that until a development plan policy is adopted, it can be afforded very little weight in the planning balance. Comments regarding National Cycle Route NC4 and common land are noted, and if West Berkshire Council requires any action on our part to address these matters, we will of course comply. I hope these representations are clear and helpful. I hope that you can support this planning application. Sincerely, Jim Bailey. So that's all I was planning to say. I'm not a planner, I'm a landscape architect. So if you do have any questions, hopefully I will be able to answer them, but I can't promise anything. Thank you for your time.
So, as I said, I think probably it's best to leave the detailed stuff about the planning, the legislation and the guidance to West Berkshire Council. Obviously, and I've mentioned earlier that we have to consider this on the basis of the information available to us. So if we make comments about the lack of information and that is subsequently provided, that will be taken into account by West Berkshire Council, but we're drawing attention that we are unable to assess those points. I just got a couple of points about this question of countryside. There is a problem, I think, in interpretation here, a technical problem, in that countryside is not defined in the, there's a document called the National Planning Policy Framework, which is a very high-level document which sets out how planning is dealt with in the UK, or at least in England. And then everything else has to fall under that and has to comply with it. So National Planning Policy Framework does not define countryside and does not mention settlement boundary. So there is no clear definition of what is countryside, whether this is in, that was a matter that was discussed in the appeal. And I think if I remember rightly from my wording, I said that the classification was contrived. I didn't say that it was. We don't disagree with the previous inspector's view, but we felt, I felt at least, that that interpretation is a contrived interpretation. And the other point was, is mentioned about the new policy DM2, which is a policy in the draft local plan on this gap. I don't think that, I think that paragraph 48 of the National Planning Policy Framework does actually, it is more open as to the degree of weight that is given, and it depends on the nature of the policy and the how far advanced the local plan is. So I don't think it's correct to say that it can be afforded very little weight. And obviously, that is a matter for West Berkshire Council, or perhaps ultimately for the inspector to decide. We can draw attention to it, and it's up to those bodies to decide whether they give weight to that view. And in fact, we did support that explicitly. We did support that policy in our representations on the draft local plan for information. So, any further question? Any other questions from anybody else to the to Mr. Harmon? No, thank you. So, do you have any? Would you like to respond to any of those points, or Mr. Harmon?
No, I think I'm happy with everything that you've said, and that's I would point out a point you made earlier about the viewpoints being taken from preferable locations. I would draw your attention to my landscape and visual impact assessment. I am a royal member of the Royal Chartered Body of Landscape Architects, and I am guided by very strict guidelines on visual photography and the requirements of producing that sort of information within my reports. The viewpoints that were provided within the landscape and visual impact assessment were agreed with West Berkshire Council ahead of us submitting the application. And so I'd be grateful if you could review that document in detail, because it was done to provide a representative view of the development and allow you to make an informed decision about the development.
Thank you for that clarification. I just speaking from past experience. Anyway, thank you for that. So if I now turn, there are two members of the public present. I think they both like to speak. So you don't need to identify yourself. Of course, you will be heard if you speak. I think probably probably first because you have a greater range of comments. Yeah. So this is a document that is available on the planning portal. I saw it this morning.
My name is Angelica Valero. I live virtually opposite the site. I'm very familiar with the site. I should say I'm also a member of EBALT and have quite a strong interest in conservation. But that aside, I've also got quite a lot of interest in local planning. I was involved with the planning of the former Brownsfield here, so I've got some experience of the planning process. Yesterday evening, we were working with the town council, and on that occasion, Jim Bailey was available via Zoom. He made very similar statements at the time. I should add to that he was specifically asked how he envisaged this site to work, because councillors were quite concerned about what exactly as a holiday destination this would offer, and he said that the design was based on the Cotswold Water Park. To put that into context, the Cotswold Water Park is over 135 acres. It's got 42 square miles of lakes. I think it's 180 different lakes and open water bodies. The primary draw to the Cotswold Water Park is water sports, sailing, paddleboarding, power boating, rowing, and yes, a little bit of fishing as well. So how these two compare or could even be put in the same class stretches credulity. And the one thing that Mr. Bailey there said as well, is opened up with, is to say that the principle of the development was agreed by the planning appeal. Presumably, many of you won't have read that appeal. I urge you to do so, because my reading, if I'm reading the same document, is definitely that that's not the case. The planning inspector really tried to draw out what benefit would this development bring to the local economy, and would that benefit outweigh the harm that this proposal would cause? The harm being to the strategic gap, being to the ecology of the lake, to be the lake itself is connected to SI watercourse behind it. So the planning inspector was far from convinced that the harm caused to the local area would be outweighed by an economic benefit. And now, bearing in mind that that proposal was for 42, there for some reason called chalets. There weren't chalets, there were flats. There were 3 major blocks of flats comprising 42 units with I think 25 angling stations around the lake. The other thing that became very apparent when Mr. Bailey was pressed on the angling provision on the lake and asked about what they knew about the fish stocks on the lake and whether they would support angling, it became absolutely apparent that that had at no point ever been considered. They know nothing about the water quality. They don't know what stock of fish is in there. They don't even seem to understand how angling works. And that really then begs the question as to how this can be a proposal to add value to the economy of Newbury and Thatcham as a holiday destination, when the only thing that's spelled out about this new holiday destination are the properties sited in the lake. And now, if you think chalet, you think something small and benign to go on holiday in. Each one of these properties is 190 square meters as a unit, with 3 25 square meter bedrooms with ensuite bathrooms, extensive open plan entertainment space downstairs, south facing over the lake. Your average 3-bedroom new built house in the UK at the moment comes in at, I think, about 110 square meters. That's 40% smaller. Are we seriously to believe that these properties are designed and to be built as holiday accommodation for people using that lake and seeing that lake as their primary reason to come to Newbury? There are lots of people coming to Newbury for example, racing. They currently stay in hotels in town. Of course, they could reroute and go to one of these chalets, but that would not add to the local economy. It would just be displacing visitors from one side to another. I've done a lot of, I've put in my official objection today. So this document that I passed out earlier is in the public domain now. I'm objecting on a whole range of issues. You have to bear in mind that the Reading Angling Association previously used this lake. The reason why they dispensed with it was that it was not suitable for angling in any meaningful way. The only fish species they could find on it was Crucian carp, which is one of the small minor carp species. And the largest one they ever caught on that lake was in 2005. It was a 4-pounder. Now, if you know anything about angling, that's pitiful. They were no longer interested in the site because it was too difficult to manage because of the rainwater runoff that goes into that lake every time it rains. A lot of problems with predation, particularly otters. And on the whole, they were using it so sporadically because it wasn't really worthwhile angling that they couldn't see point in keeping the site. How this is going to support a resort development is just not really believable. The problems, though, is that the lake itself acts as a filter bed for the SSSI area beyond it. The outflow goes into, first of all, the inflow is all the rainwater drainage that comes from the entire, so Pennant Hill, Turnpike, Bennett Hill area, all of that flows into the lake every time it rains. It changes the water quality on every occasion, which is why they were struggling with stocks on that side. And the outflow goes into a channel that leads down into the lakes for the Thatcham Angling Association. The lake itself, because it's still water, the sediments. I can go into
Yeah.
huge amount of details. Tree removal. A lot of the trees I wanted rid of dealt with by Thames Water. The applicants agents themselves carried out further tree removal works, and for the access, they will strip a lot of trees out. If you've seen the tree proposal, it's still significant felling. Only they're no longer talking about individual trees, but groups of trees. These are crack willows, and crack willows have a fantastic ability to absorb flood water and protect soils from erosion. The one thing they don't do is they don't look pretty. So in reports they're described as moribund or not particularly attractive. They are crack willows, they do what they do. And this is perhaps also something that Councillor McCann might be interested in. If you're familiar with gravel pits, you need to pile into them in order to put these things up. There is that new high pressure sewage pipe running through there. Now, our house is a few doors down from the Bracewell home. I'm still repairing the cracks on our house from the piling at Bracewell. How I would really want to see Thames Water's response to what they would view the impact of piling on that side would be.
Just make one point here that my recollection from the previous appeal was that there was debate about this is historically a gravel pit. My recollection is that the inspector concluded, I don't think there were any buildings on it. And the inspector concluded that for the purposes of the appeal, it would be considered as woodland and lakes. He felt that the history of the gravel extraction was so distant that it wasn't a brownfield site in effect.
Well, it's
Very good. Ask Dr.
Yeah, I completely empathise with what you're saying, but we have to be fair to the chap who's here. We gave him 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And you know,
Yeah.
we all have passions, and you're absolutely correct, and it's fantastic to hear. It's really good for you to express that because the emotion is clearly coming over. But we could be here for quite a while.
Yes.
I have a second member of the public. Do you have any points to add to that? Come forward, yeah.
But thank you for your passion.
Hi, I'm James Mattox. I'm a local resident and I'm a cyclist, and I cycle to and from work using Hanbridge Lane. And my main concern is the fact that traffic from the site would go directly onto Hanbridge Lane, meaning as a cyclist, we would have to personally slow down completely just to see whether a car's coming, as we would have full range of view onto that road, as well as the fact that it would cause congestion because in rush hour that road goes to a standstill. I also mentioned in my official objection about the destruction of the environment in very brief detail. There's lots of trees because that area is full of trees.
I just add to that. Well, one of the reasons I made the comment about the lack of drawings was to do with the cyclist and the access. And from what I could see, the drop curbs didn't allow a proper a cycle to go across. They were designed for pedestrians. Councillor Lunn.
Can I just ask with regards the context that we're looking at, is this just the construction traffic or is this the permanent situation?
I guess it would be both. Yeah. So thank you. I guess at this point I should perhaps ask Mr. Harmon if you believe there's anything that's been said that needs to be corrected factually. I don't think we want to enter into a debate between members of the public, but I think I ought to give you that opportunity to say if you think that anything that's been said is factually incorrect.
Well, thank you for giving me the opportunity. I would just say that the majority of these things have been covered in detail within our application, and if you require additional information to help you make a more informed decision, then please do let us know, and we will oblige.
Okay, well, unfortunately, the time frame that is allotted to parish councils to respond to any planning application does not give us time to wait. So I think we do need to consider this on the basis of the information before me. I have read the design statement before writing this. I guess, has anyone, any council got any final comments? So what I would like to suggest as I read the document is that I haven't heard anything that makes me change my view, at least that the matters that the grounds I suggested for rejection are things that would need to be considered by West Berkshire Council, possibly in the light of further documentation. So I would like to propose that we object to this application with the proposal that I submitted to this meeting with that editorial correction on the number of rooms per. And it's seconded by Councillor Watts. Are those in favour of making that objection? Those in favour? Councillor Watts, you're going to give. And I noticed that Councillor Pemberton is abstaining. I suspect you're abstaining, are you? Yeah, thank you. And that may be because he is also a West Berkshire councillor, though and of course we are waiting for the announcement about the positions on the various committees, which will be decided tomorrow. So I guess he's reserving his position till he knows formally what's he's doing. Thank you. Thank you very much for that. I think I might be seeing you again at a future meeting in West Berkshire Council's chamber. Anyway, thank you for that. So we then move on to, and thank you, Mr. Harmon. And if you'd like to, you're perfectly welcome to stay for the other ones, but perfectly welcome to leave as well.
No, I'll make my excuses and leave. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. So, item number 2, Thatcham West, a dropped curb and conversion of a front garden to a permeable blocked paved driveway. That sounds a little less substantial.
Yeah.
Over to the deputy clerk. And I say what I'd suggest is that because we have so many applications, that I will attempt to move to a decision when I think we've got enough information to do that, rather than going through all the detail that we might on a lighter meeting. Okay.
So this is a planning application for a dropped curb and conversion of existing front garden to a permeable block paved driveway. The applicant is looking for permission to drop the curb outside their property to create a driveway in their front garden. They wish to utilise the space to remove household and visitor cars off of the highway.
You have a street view.
I do. So here we go. So it's this corner here on Brownsfield Road. It's this property. So I just go out onto. Sorry, I'll make you dizzy. Okay. So it's this property here, and they're looking to put a drop curb here and make off-road parking. So this is the existing verge and garden area, and they are proposing to drop the curb on the corner to be able to park here and take the existing wall down to provide access to the driveway. I'm going to put another wall back in here. We have had, oops, sorry. So they're looking to amend the existing skin of the boundary wall to a double skin, utilise, maintain a permeable blocked paved surface to assist with water runoff. Highways have commented on the proposal, and they have said the proposed access is sited on the bend at the junction of Chapman Walk and Northfield Road. An access in this location will result in conflicting traffic movements at the junction, which would be to the detriment of the highway and pedestrian safety. In addition, the proposed driveway is of insufficient size for vehicles to manoeuvre within it, which will result in vehicles reversing to or from the highway, which is a hazard to pedestrians and road users at this junction. Both of these would be to detriment to the highway and pedestrian safety and the free flow of the traffic. The highway recommendation is for refusal. The refusal reason is the formation of a new access in close proximity to the junction of Chapman Walk with Northfield Road would result in conflicting traffic movements, which would adversely affect road safety and the flow of traffic. In addition, no on-site vehicle turning is provided, and this will result in vehicles reversing. So basically what you just said before.
So, are there any objections from members of the public to this?
No.
Okay. So, my initial reaction was to say no objection, subject to the highways being satisfied, and I think we've got the answer the answer about the view of highways. Does anyone feel strongly that in support of this?
I would like to ask a couple of points. There's two problems. First of all, they're absolutely right. You've got to reverse into that. What's going? It just, if it was to the side where the gate is, that would be more reasonable access, but they've got a street light there, so that's their issue, and that's for a possible future application. But to reverse out onto a T-junction, it's pushing it, to say the least. You'd have thought so, wouldn't you?
Yes. So can I propose that we therefore, I think I see people nodding, propose that we object to this application for the grounds, the reasons cited by highways in their comments.
Too near the junction.
Yeah, well, we just need to say we object on for the reasons given by the highways, and that covered all of the points that they make.
I don't understand why it's called Chapman Walk.
Well, somebody
Something the highways naming department.
No, we parish council get asked. We've had long debates at previous meetings of planning and highways about names. So, for the record, I propose that the council can second those in favour of that objection with those grounds. Thank you. That's unanimous. Number 3, side extension and loft conversion, including side dormer windows and deluxe windows, relocation. So at this point, let's say that we have a policy that we don't consider small applications, which are single stories, conservatories and similar things. I think this one just crosses the threshold into needing our consideration. So over to the deputy clerk to.
Right, so this property, it's quite a long plot here on Pound Lane. They're looking to put a side extension and loft conversion in, including dormers to both sides of the property. I'll show you a visual. So located here, this is the property concerned. It currently has a dormer to the front. It's a detached shallow bungalow with parking for several cars to the front of the property, and is situated within a mixture of housing on this road of low level and 2-storey properties.
Can I mention that it's not visible on here, but the property almost opposite has had a really substantial extension, roughly doubling its size, which is too recent to be seen here. So let me go back to the plans. So so currently it has parking to the front of the property, but they're looking to create parking for 4 cars up the side of the property and reinstate the access, the front door, to the front rather than being to the side.
property. They are then looking to reconfigure the ground floor. So this is the current elevations with the access to the side at the moment. And these are the current floor plans. So they've got 2 bedrooms to the front, a lounge, some bathroom, and then the living area to the rear of the property with 1 bedroom to the top floor. They're looking at popping this section out to the side to extend it and square it off here. Move the kitchen along the side here, a lounge to the front, and family dining area to the back, and just 1 bedroom to the ground floor. Then upstairs, this is the existing bedroom upstairs, but they're looking to take it back further and have a further 2 bedrooms and a bathroom added to the top floor, and thus extending back here with the 2 side dormers coming out to the side here.
Anyone want to see any more? So, let's say that unfortunately you can't see it. I did actually have a photograph because we discussed it, the property opposite, because we had discussed this wall last meeting. So anyone have a view about this application? Should we object? Do you have reasons to object to it? Really the overdevelopment, I guess. I can mention one concern I have is about the concept of having 4 parking bays along the side, because in practice I don't think people would move 3 cars out to get the 4th car to leave. So I think we've nodded. If you don't have any questions, I would like to propose no objection, but expressing concern about the parking provision being in a single line, and that the council might wish to consider that aspect. Agree to that. So I propose that. Councillor McCann seconding that. Those in favour?
I'll let you get that.
In favour of those in favour of making that decision, that is unanimous as well. Thank you. We'll get on to and I'd say here that Velux is responsible for at least half an hour on most planning meetings due to the number of applications we get involving them. Okay, number 4, Thatcham Central, Bruce Way, a 2-storey side, single-storey rear and alteration to front bay window with continuous roof porch.
Right. I just realised in there, I can't see where it is on their location map. Oh, there it is. Very faint red line around there. So yes, it's 45 Bruce Way. They're looking to do a 2-storey side extension, single-storey rear extension, and alteration to the front bay window and continuous porch. So just here and here. So currently the front elevation looks like this. I believe it's a semi-detached. Show you a quick picture. Sorry, just find you the quick. Is it semi? Yes, it's a semi. So it's this property.
That's
Yeah. Some mixture of some detached, some single story. It's at the end of the cul-de-sac. So the property was previously approved a single-storey extension in December 2019, which, because it was a single story, it was not considered by the town council. But it looks as though that hasn't been built, and now they're applying for a rear single-storey extension with a 2nd story to accommodate a further bedroom above here, with an ensuite over this garage. taking the property to a 4-bedroom property. Additionally, they want to extend the porch over the bay window, so across here. They'll be using materials that match the existing. Go back to the plans, extra thing in there. So these are the existing plans. Ground floor with living, dining and a kitchen here. And the garage slightly back, and your 3 bedrooms. And then they're looking to extend over the top of the garage, and a single there.
And if you could stop there, I'll
Yep.
just point out something which comes up quite a lot. You'll see that the ridge of the extension is lower than the main building. That's called subservience, and it's something which is frequently desired by planning people. I'm not always convinced, but that is something which is and one of the previous councillors was particularly keen on it, but I just draw your attention to that as a feature which will come up quite a lot.
Stops the terrace look.
Yeah.
So it doesn't all look like a terrace. Yeah.
So
Yeah. It looks like an extension.
So, yes, reconfiguring downstairs, and then upstairs and pop a bedroom and an ensuite over the top in there.
And another thing I'll let you know, that West Berkshire Council does not count a garage as a parking space anymore, on account of the fact that so few people actually have any space in their garage to put a car in.
There are no representations on this. Highways have made a comment. They said this proposal would increase the number of bedrooms within this house from 3 to 4. West Berkshire Council's current residential car parking standards are set out in policy P1. This site is located in zone 1, where both 3 and 4 bed houses should be provided with 2 driveway car parking spaces. 1 driveway car parking space is provided. This is a shortfall on the car parking standards. However, as the parking requirement is unchanged from the existing, no highway objections are raised. It looks like here rear access to the garden as well as through the garage. Yeah,
That's another point that we often, but we don't like wheelie bins being left at the front, so we pay attention to extensions that block the side access. So this one, of course, there's no space, but the garage, you could get the wheelie bin through the garage.
Yeah.
Less likely you want to put the wheelie bin through whatever it is, the kitchen or whatever you use. It's staying as a garage.
It's staying as a garage. They are putting the utility slightly in there, but you'll still have access through to the rear of the property.
Rear access is maintained.
Do we know the direction of the property, which way it faces?
Well, that would be in the original, the first plan.
It's north.
North there, so
North. So
So that's
that's
yeah.
that,
that's
south. So
This
that's
is northeast.
In my head, I'm just questioning the light levels of the adjoining, the next door property, the garden.
So this is where the extension would be over the garage.
So it would lose some morning light for the conservatory next door. Yes.
That's
So they haven't, so we have to be a bit careful because West Berkshire Council does not write to neighbours. So they have to spot the orange sign, and that if the orange sign's been put up correctly, then that neighbour would, but the neighbour behind wouldn't. So we have to be a bit careful. We can't assume that all neighbours will be aware of the application, particularly if it's coming very recently.
Can I ask a slightly anorakty
Yeah.
technical question? If I'm not mistaken, the light access is 25 degrees from the centre of the nearest window. So if you just show the back there, the property, the one previous one. So above the conservatory, from there, it would be 25 degrees to the buildings, as we looked at to the right.
Yeah.
So if the extension falls on that, then that casts a shadow. Or look, as I've done this before.
Yeah, that may be a local policy.
Yeah.
I don't recall. We have objected to things on the grounds of light obstruction, and it hasn't.
Perhaps we could raise it and say that it's not an objection,
Yeah.
but could that be just looked at to make sure that there isn't
Yeah, if
a
we,
nuisance issue?
Yeah.
If that makes
Yeah.
sense.
yeah, so if we say no objections on condition that it provided that the council, West Berkshire Council is satisfied about the light, the obstruction of light to the neighbour, whichever number the neighbouring property is, along with the conservatory.
You can actually see a shadow on the left hand side. And
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, conservatives all.
Okay. Thank you. So I need to vote on that. Those that we're back. We made no objection. Was there no objection with that condition?
No objection on condition.
Yeah.
West Berkshire Council is
Yeah.
satisfied with the
Yeah.
instruction.
That I propose that Councillor McCann seconded. Those in favour of that, thank you. That's unanimous as well. So item 5. Do you want to? Shall we just? Well, so I just explain this very briefly. So that's your application for determining prior approval. So basically, someone who wanting to make a development can apply to the West Berkshire Council to ask if planning permission is required. Some of those are notified to us, but that is a legal question, not a planning, not a question of the merits of the proposal. And if West Berkshire Council says no permission is required, they can do it anyway, and we can't say anything about it. If they say that planning permission is required, it will come back to us later anyway. So I think at this point, can I suggest that we note this one, unless people have a strong objection to office space, conversion of office space above units 1 and 2 Kingsland Centre. That is the bank, I assume.
It's over the top of the bank. There were a couple of representations, but
Okay.
they seem to think it was over the top of one of the cafes. So I don't.
Okay. Well, the point is, I think that at the moment, it is an application to determine if approval is required. So for the purposes of this meeting, I suggest that we note it unless someone has a strong objection to the principle of that development. So if we note that, those in favour of noting that. Thank you. I saw you, Councillor McCann, raise an eyebrow, which is sufficient. Okay. So item 6. Now this is a retrospective application, which means that they've already done the work and then found out that the planning application was required. Not infrequent. So there it is. That's the.
So
There is, by the way, an issue there which has come up on the high street that once accommodation over of shops is converted into flats, that can have an impact on noise, the complaints about noise, which can have a retrospective impact on other nighttime activities in adjoining properties. Anyway, but that's for the planning application stage. So so we now have this retrospective application. So the Grange School, is it Grange School? Yeah, Grange Nursery, Churchgate.
yeah. So yeah, as Chairman advised, it's a retrospective application, which we believe has already gone ahead when they're now applying for it, and also for listed building consent. So no building works are actually proposed on the buildings, it's just the grounds surrounding. Just move through. So far I've got no representations on this. Highways have no objection. The conservation officer heard no objection to it. Do not feel that the new fencing, which largely replaces or runs parallel with existing timber fencing of a similar nature, would cause any harm to the setting of the listed building.
And it's what's the height of it? Is
I think it's more adding,
Yeah.
2.5.
yeah. So it does need planning. There's basically, if you're over a metre, if you're facing onto a road, if you're over a metre, you need planning permission, unless it's a school, in which case you need planning permission for over 2 metres. Over 2 metres.
Oh, they did need.
They did need it, yes. So
So that's the
anyone feel strongly about this one? Can I suggest that, given that it's actually giving privacy to a nursery, would be happy to make no objections to this one. Oh, in fact, it's retrospective. Yeah, we do no objections.
Yeah.
Those in favour of no objections.
No objections?
Thank you.
Okay.
Then we have amendment to a front elevation to relocate the trade counter entrance in Elsford Way, which is in Colthrop, if you know that. Well away from anywhere that people live.
So this is from Floor Codes Limited on Elsford Way.
You have a plan, the lead is to go for the plan, I think, rather than. So the red line area is boundary of the site on any application.
I spent my whole time going up and down size. So yes, this is the existing site plan, and the existing configuration at the moment. So they've got car parking here and some hard landscaping and shrubbery here.
Mm-hmm.
This is their current trade counter entrance. And they're looking to move the entrance from here just round the corner and create an access ramp as well. So that's where the existing entrance is. Just here, and they're looking to move it to here.
So given that the impact on residents of Thatcham is I think nil, and it's a relatively small change, can I suggest that we make no objection?
Yes.
Those in favour of making no objection, thank you.
Okay.
Another combined single-story, two-story extension.
Yep. So this is on Park Lane, it's 30 Park Lane. Yes, as the chairman said, single-story rear extension, two-story side extension, and alterations, attached single garage following the demolition of an existing sectional concrete garage. It's a 3-bedroom semi-detached property with a reasonable amount of ground to the front, rear and side of the property. And they're looking to increase the size of the house, but it looks like they're going to retain the same number of bedrooms. The property came before the council in 2019 for a similar application, but it included a double garage, which Thatcham Town Council had no objections, but it was refused permission by West Berkshire Council. It then again came before the Town Council a couple of months later, where they changed it to a 2-story side extension and a single-story rear extension. I think they'd removed the garage idea. And permission was approved by West Berkshire Council, and again Thatcham Town Council had no objections. I think they've since sold on the property with the planning permission, and the new applicants are now coming back to update this with another application. So have a look at where we are. So this is the property. So they're looking to extend to the side here, and if you note, next door have already had a large extension to the side. So there's already a precedent next door.
And there's probably 4 or 5 other side of the facility as well, I think.
There's plenty of parking space.
Yeah. So this is what they're proposing to do, is put this side extension on here with the garage at single-story to the side of it. So they're going to move their lounge over here and create a big kitchen diner, and then upstairs they've got 3 bedrooms, and they're just extending this bedroom out over the top of the garage and putting an ensuite to the front of it there. That's the existing renovations.
Makes the upstairs section of it a bit pointless, really.
Well, therefore, exactly. So, in the overall scheme of things, anyone got any questions to concerns about this one? So, given as it's similar to we've made no objections to previously, though that different council, can I suggest that we make no objection to this one as well? Second, councillor Watt this time. So, Those in favour of making no objection, thank you very much. Then we have another one, which is adjacent parish. It's actually, the house is in the adjacent parish, but the garden is partly in Thatcham parish, in fact. Because it's got a large garden.
Right, okay, so this is up off Harts Hill Road. I believe it's this bungalow here. Yeah, so it's about 40 meters from the road. It's just above the quarrying, isn't it? So,
Yeah. We've got I see a site plan in the middle.
Yeah.
So, but it's assuming that it's the boundary that's shown on the OS map.
Yeah, so it's,
Yeah.
again, if I expand that up. So it's quite a sizable plot there.
So the sort of bottom left bit of it is in the Thatcham parish of the garden.
Oh, just that little bit there.
That little bit there, yeah.
But they're not building in that bit, aren't they?
No.
I use that road every day. I live that way. Oh, right. And my objection to that is the width of the road, and
Yeah.
it doesn't really show it on that, but
Yeah.
how.
So the point is that they're taking they're demolishing one bungalow and replacing it with another bungalow. So in planning terms, they're not increasing the they may increase the footprint, but they're not increasing significantly the access issues. Inside. If they were going to put more houses in there, that would be and frankly, if they're going to do this, that probably suggests that they're not planning to do that in the future. So you might regard that as a positive.
So they're looking to erect a 4-bedroom dwelling with a detached garage, stroke carport, following the demolition of the existing bungalow, which has been in the same family since it was built. So it's in need of updating.
Yeah.
The access to the site will remain existing, and associated with the development of off-road car parking and turning will be provided for a minimum of 4 vehicles. All existing boundary treatment will remain unchanged. When the new dwelling, the ground floor will provide an open plan kitchen and dining room, living room, study and WC, along with a utility and boot room. And the first floor will have 4 bedrooms, 3 with en suites.
Can I suggest that because the actual property is outside the parish, we don't need to consider the details of the actual building? The access obviously affects us indirectly. You can't see, I don't think you can see the property is surrounded by trees, so you can't actually see it from inside the Thatcham parish. I would therefore be minded if anyone has any concerns. Oh, there you are. You can't see it.
It's in there. There we go.
It's there, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's the access. Is that the access?
So
Yeah.
the only thing I might say is if they're going to do that, can we insist on having a pavement along the boundary? But anyway, then I think that's a planning consideration. But yeah, so can I suggest that we make no objection to this one as well? Do we need to probably both commenting? No objection. No objection. No objection. And then we get to sorry, we need to vote on that. Sorry, I think myself voting for no objection. Thank you. Then move on to the second major one of the evenings. Achieving Cold Ash, adjacent parish, land west of Heath Lane and north of Bowling Green Road. So this site has been subject to applications at least once. It was put forward as part of the local plan and was not accepted by West Berkshire Council. Part of the reason that they gave was at the time they were considering a large number of houses. I think it was 600. And they said that the proposal didn't provide the infrastructure that Thatcham needed. So they then favoured North East Thatcham, which doesn't provide the infrastructure that Thatcham needs. So this application is for 200 houses, plus a large country park. Various other things. Play area.
80-bed care home.
So the complication here is that we have objected to North East Thatcham as the site within the local plan. And my feeling was that we ought to leave our options a bit open for this. If they're reconsidering that this is actually So have you got the plan? You know where it is now. There's not
Sorry,
Thatcham.
I'm still new to
Yeah,
these.
so do you know where the Regency Park is?
Yes.
It sort of spills behind that to the east and goes up to the cold action. Yeah. So one of the accesses would actually be between the two attenuation basins either side of that access road.
Sorry, just so
Yeah.
Matt. Oh, got you. Called out shell. Got
Yeah.
it. They were in
Yeah.
the between 4 weeks ago. Clearing.
Yeah,
Yes,
that's the clearing
That's the
is
floods.
flood attenuation scheme, so that would be retained and the development work would work.
Got it. Yeah. Okay. Just
But if you got,
Yeah, we've got some.
show a map.
got the mental map.
Yeah, so I'd struggled with some of the them because they were too big, so I've had to portion it out into separate pieces. So yes, this is the site around here. With proposed access here.
So the white area is an existing property, it's the, what it's called, it's where Tim Henry learned to play tennis, I believe. And the last bit to the left is the Regency Park Hotel.
And these are the flood attenuation basins that are currently being built. And the proposal is for an access through there and also down here as well. This shows the extent of the housing development is to be in these shaded areas, and I believe the 80-bed care home would be down here, I think. And this would be the country park sort of thing up here. So this application is just for access, with all other rights matters reserved for a later date.
But it is sort of effectively
If we say yes to that, we'll get
something will happen. Yeah.
So
And it always says infrastructure, but we never know.
So there's quite a large design and access statement covering this with the context and so forth. It's going to maybe look a bit further down to give you a bit more context.
So, couple of features of this statement, that they are proposing 45% affordable homes as against the West Berkshire policy of 40%. They have the care home, but the care home counts as accommodation, not infrastructure. So it's counted as a part of the number of residences. Anyway, there's a quota that they do how they count that.
They're looking to put a few more flood basins.
Well, they always have to put attenuation basins in nowadays. So one of the, I suppose, go through the key features that I sort of considered when writing the application. So the area of the country park is quite a large proportion of this. The housing doesn't go above an elevation of 95 metres above sea level, which is roughly the same height of it. So you can see it's roughly the same height as Southend on the east side. So it doesn't go further up the hill, though it sort of fills in the gap here. Yeah. A detail was that if you look at the plan some way down, they show this country park has footpaths, and all of the footpaths start and end on the housing, which, given that we want the country park to be wider use, is not good because, and in fact, the rights of way officer in West Berkshire Council has picked that up and suggested 2 extra access points to the east and west. I've suggested a third well, the point is, firstly, I'm suggesting that we object to the proposal. But the point is, again, you have to if West Berkshire Council is minded to approve it, you want to get the things in that you would like, particularly as far as access is concerned. So if you go back to that plan here, we've got that flood attenuation pond at the left-hand side, which is currently being built. And I've suggested that they would consider putting a footpath down from the country park beside the flood attenuation, so you've got an extra access from Bowling Green Road, which is that area of housing development, to get in without going through. And they might also mention car parking, because so that if people go there to walk their dogs, they don't have to park on the residential streets. But that is put without prejudice to any objection to the site of the proposal. So that is the application. As I say, it is the application at the moment is only for access. I've therefore mentioned the extra access for pedestrians, for walkers.
So,
But you have to have in the back of your mind that when it's free for access, then something might happen. I think that I would say here, because this is outside the settlement boundary, it's not in the draft local plan, it's been rejected before. My gut feeling is on the basis of the current policies, it would be rejected again. But if the local plan is revised or reconsidered as the Lib Dem group has suggested it should be, then this would need to be part of the overall consideration of housing needs, because the previous council, at least in its response, said that we do acknowledge the need for more housing in Thatcham at the appropriate level. So that is a sort of summary of what I have said in the, there's another interesting point. So yes.
sorry, Chairman, if I may. So I only had 4 drawings which they have submitted, which are basically access. They're coming up with, but there've also been about 95 plus objection representations.
I suspect that they are residents of Colrash. So there's one other point I made, which I discovered that another of the council's policies says that if North East Thatcham proceeds, then part of this site is needed to improve the Northern Distributor Road, which is something that I think everyone else has forgotten about. I happen to come across it for other reasons. And so I've mentioned that as something that would need to be considered. That is a sort of summary of what I have suggested we say, we object.
Isn't the access already there though? They've already made the access from the roundabout. They've already made the access from
the access from the roundabout is correct. The other one would have to be added. That's not there at present. So there would be to the east of the Regency Park.
Right.
The other one is to the west for the other full continuation scheme. So so that is, so just to summarise what I've suggested we make. So on the basis of the current local plan, we object because there's insufficient infrastructure for the current number of residents of Thatcham, and this is not proposing to add anything. On the draft local plan, it does actually impinge on the gap, but it doesn't significantly reduce the gap between because it fills in that hollow. And therefore ought to be considered if there is a reconsideration of needs in Thatcham. And then there's 2 extra points about Northern Distributor Road and the access to the country park for visitors on foot. So I would suggest that we object with those to the proposal with those grounds for objection. And so Councillor Watson proposing, I better get something that voted. All those in favour of so objecting, thank you. Does that bring us to the end of the agenda? So that's the end of the ones that we have for consideration. You will see at the bottom of the agenda, of the next below that on the agenda, there are 3 planning applications that we don't consider unless there have been objections, because they're considered minor. Have there been any objections?
Can I just clarify? I've just realised I know number 12A. So it's a non-pecuniary interest. They just know the people who are whose quality is.
That is, but we're not
noting.
we're not considering it in any case.
Absolutely.
So thank you for that. So if nobody has any objections, then we'll move on to agenda item 8, planning matters arising since the publication of the agenda.
No, none from me, Chairman.
Just mention here that if you're interested, the Thatcham Town Council subscribes to a service that enables you to receive in your email notification of any planning application, which I find very helpful. It's from the homepage on the Thatcham Town Council website. I think you can set it up to choose only part of Thatcham or all of Thatcham. And it gives you a direct link to the final documents. Okay, so that agenda item 8 is no action. The agenda item 9, I think that is highways and road safety matters. So we have agenda item 9A, which is recent meeting we created a table to keep track of the comments and concerns that we raised with West Berkshire Council, to keep track of the status of their being dealt with. Is there anything particular you'd like to highlight?
Just having a quick look. So I since the previous meeting, I've redesigned the format that we were producing this in. So on this occasion, I've given you details of all the items that are still open status. Some have got unknown status next to them because we're still waiting for a response as well, and some of them are closed statuses. So what I envisage doing going forward is coming back with the ones that are still open and notifications of anything that we've had updated since then. So I won't bring you all of them before you. It'll just be the ones that are still outstanding or that we've had a notification from West Berkshire Council. We're struggling a little at the moment because there's been a discrepancy between the reference numbers that they log at their end and then they send back out to us, and we're having to cross-reference three different reference numbers. So we're working on that at the moment, and we're trying to follow up with them on things that are outstanding as well. But it's been tricky to do this with the difference with the reference numbers because we don't get a lot of information back. But we're aware that they are putting in a new system of logging reporting problems, and so some of the stuff is on the old system and some of the stuff is on the new system. So we're just trying to
watch this space.
So,
we're just trying to get on top of that.
and of course, if we identify anything new at this at any meeting, then it will be added to this, and it may if it gets on the surgeries at the town centre as well.
But the key thing is to highlight to residents when it's a problem that needs to be reported directly to West Berkshire Council, because they'll get a better direct response from them rather than coming through Thatcham Town Council for us waiting a response and then going back to them. So we're trying to cut out the middleman.
And a tip: if you want to report anything yourself, I've discovered that you get a better response if you use your Thatcham Town Council email address than if you use your personal one. So I think for tonight we just note this and then we'll look at it in more detail at future meetings. Thank you. But thank you. That's a fairly new development, and it sort of simplifies things where we're trying to track things. Station Road. It's a closure, another closure for Network Rail to carry out repairs overnight.
But they keep leaving the signs that it's still closed in the morning. Don't say keep, sorry, they did. On Sunday, people were still avoiding going through the level crossing, which is because they left the signs saying the road was closed.
Right.
I ignored them, but there you go.
It's a point to note.
Yeah, do we want to go back to West Berkshire Council then and advise them that the signs were not being removed in due time? Could they ask?
It was supposed to finish at 8:15.
Yeah, so that's the point. The signs were, in previous occasions, the signs were not being removed on the completion of the work, and could they ask Network Rail to do so in future?
Yes, that would be very good.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you. So we'll note that. Can I just say a quick show of hands? We note that it's comfortable. We note that. Thank you. Receive any highways matters since the publication of the agenda?
I've got a couple. You may have already had these circulated to your email, but they came through. We've got notification of a road closure on Turnpike Road, which is in both ends of Newbury and Thatcham. It will be closed from the 5th to the 10th of June between the hours of 7 PM and 5 AM from its junctions with Fir Tree Lane to A4 Benham Hill roundabout, and the closure is to enable Volker Highways to carry out highways improvements on behalf of West Berkshire Council's diversions will be on site.
Is that pothole filling?
That's actually completely surfacing.
Mhm.
So yeah, that one I did Obviously that will make it impossible to get access directly to the hospital from Thatcham, but I think probably the number of people who need it for those hours is small. I think the bus services are very good at working at the reroute.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, it's 7 p.m.
But
7
the
p.m. to
last
5 a.m.
jet black will it'll catch the last jet black.
Mhm.
Anyway,
And then secondly, we've been notified of a lane, Stony Lane closure on the 31st of May, between the hours of 9:30 and 3:30 from its junctions with Hartmead Road and Station Road. The closure is to enable Volker Highways to carry out permanent carriageway repairs on behalf of West Berkshire Council. And the work will be undertaken with a full closure with no through traffic allowed. Signed diversion will be in place.
so that is affecting access to Kennet School, but it is during half term, I believe.
Yes,
So
it's
we've got half term, yeah.
it's not.
So they obviously have actually thought about when we need to do it. Yeah, that's what's a good coincidence. So
Yes, so it's
note,
now there,
Yeah.
so.
thank you. Note that. Thank you very much. So decision notices. So this is we review the outcome of the planning applications that be considered when they decided. So this is decision notices because that's not normally circulated in advance. We just review that on the screen.
Yeah. Sorry, bear with me. Right, so as the chairman said, there were the decisions that West Berkshire have made, and we report back on whether we've considered it, what our response was, and what West Berkshire decision was. So quite a lot of these we hadn't considered. This one, Mallard's Reach, was a loft conversion with 3 additional roof lights. Thatcham Town Council had no objections, and West Berkshire Council have approved that one.
That third one, if you could pause there, the section 8(2) of the Water Industry Act, although it's not something for planning and highways, this is saying that at least some of the responsibilities for the sewage works is being transferred from Thames Water to a infrastructure investment company, which we'll need to pay attention to in the future. Nothing we can do about it. This was just a notification to the wrong people. Well, you might have someone else to write to. Anyway, so just I thought highlight that. There's nothing we can do about it because it was anyway.
And then so basically other ones weren't considered. So
right, so nothing against what we said. Thank you. So that is just a note. You need to put a vote of noting. Thank you. And report from outside council, town council appointees to outside bodies. Of course, we have due to the change in membership, those two, they the new members, aren't they? New appointees.
we have 2 new.
Yeah. So they're not members of the committee, so we'll need to work that out. But I think we have. You have a report. Oh, even better. Thank you.
Requested one.
Okay.
So basically, yes, from Thatcham Flood Forum and Surface Water Management Plan Funding Committee, the update is work is progressing well on the North and East Thatcham flood alleviation schemes and should be completed later this year. Regarding the Memorial Field scheme, the final project in the SWMP, the Flood Forum and SWMP committee are awaiting feedback from West Berks, the Hall trustees and Ardent Consulting about the proposed layout of the scheme. They are also anticipating a date for the public consultation probably over the summer, after which the planning application will no doubt be made. Next meeting of the Flood Forum will be the 18th of July.
Yeah, if I can add to that, there was a site meeting. So this is largely affects Memorial Field, but the access is across the cricket pitch, which is which the Town Council is the landowner, I believe. And there was a site meeting to which the Town Council was not invited. And I am sceptical that they need to take quite as much of the land as the plans currently show. But that is but I think so. We might want to ask them the consultants to come to a future meeting, but we'll discuss that offline with. that would be a RNA, I guess, because it's a to do with a land, a recreation facility rather than the plan, not it's a planning application. Okay, so that is completion of business, and I will therefore declare this meeting closed. Thank you very much. So normally, it's most meetings we don't have any